Hi, ito po si Curious Kamote uli para sa pagpapatuloy ng ating lesson tungkol sa evolution. But this time, we are going to talk about evolution and natural selection. So, ready na ba kayo? Okay, let's start. Okay, so what is natural selection? Ano ba itong natural selection na naririnig nyo na or nabasa nyo na before? So, according to this definition, when you say natural selection, it's like describing an organism that is best suited or best adapted to an environment. According to this idea, those organisms that are well adapted or better suited in the environment survive and reproduce more than others. So, dalawang bagay ang dapat yung tandaan. The ability to survive is linked with the ability to reproduce. So, hindi lahat kayang gawin to, and that's why nature selects. And the word adaptation is also linked sa natural selection. Now, in the past lesson, we talked about adaptation as the ability of an organism to become better suited by developing or acquiring inherited traits that would allow them to survive in the environment. And adaptation can be behavioral, structural, or physiological. Now, according to Charles Darwin's idea of natural selection, there are 4 ways or 4 steps by which natural selection can occur. And what are they? These are the following. Number 1, overproduction. The second one is variation. And the third one is competition. And last is selection. Let's talk about them one by one. Alright, overproduction. Paano itong nangyayari? Yan. Each species produces more offspring that can survive. In other words, mas marami yung naipapanganak na organisms. So, if you look at the examples here, dun sa left side, if you notice, diba, yung mga daga, maraming sila marami ang naipapanganak na daga at one time compared sa atin. Kasi sa tao, isa lang. Or, well, may mga cases where merong 8, merong twins. But, if you compare humans to other animals, most especially insects, talo tayo ron kasi mas marami talaga na napapanganak nun. And that ability of the species to produce more offspring allows them to survive. Now, this right side, these are tadpoles. Frogs. Okay? Second one is variation. Each individual has a unique combination of inherited traits from their parents. Paano to? So, why is it important? Number 1, because the environment changes. The more variation within a species, the more likely it will survive. And when you say variation within a species, let's say humans, diba ikaw, you are a product of a combination of traits from your parents. Not just one parent, but both of them. Kaya nga, during genetic mixing, it's 50-50. There's a 50-50 chance of you inheriting traits from either your mother or your father. So, sabi dito sa example niya, if everyone is the same, they are all vulnerable to the same environmental changes or diseases. Say, for instance, a species of an organism is 100% the same. When that organism experiences environmental change, maybe catastrophe or disaster or a tragedy of some sort, and they are not adapted or well suited to survive that kind of disaster or catastrophe, all of them will die and the entire species will be extinguished. Patay silang lahat. Unlike kung merong variation, merong matitira. Okay? Ganun siya. The more variation of types of species in a habitat, the more likely at least some will survive. So, yun. Hindi mauubos totally. Example niya dito, dinosaurs replaced by mammals. Kasi diba, during some scientists would say asteroidal impact and volcanic eruption has caused the death of dinosaurs. So these dinosaurs were eventually replaced by mammals who are better suited or well adapted to that kind of environment. Okay, look at the pictures here. Community A and Community B. And try to answer this question. Which community has a better chance of surviving a natural disaster? Try to look at the number of species or the variation of species in Community A and Community B. And on the basis of what you can see in the illustration, try answering this. Okay? We'll ask you during the class. Let's continue. Number 3 is competition. So how's this? Individuals compete for limited resources. Okay, a resource can be food, water, space, or mates. Pagkain. Tama, di ba? We all compete. Not just humans. All living organisms compete for food. All living organisms compete with water. All living organisms compete with space and potential mates. Ganun siya. Siyempre, the more or the less food available in the environment, the more competition individuals will have. The competition can be intraspecific or within the same species of organisms, or interspecific, meaning the competition between different kinds of species. Let's say, for instance, different types of cats in the wild, like leopards, tigers, or lions compete for food. Same thing with space and water. That's why in terms of space, you have this territoriality or territorial behaviors of certain animals when they prefer to stay in one place and they don't want other organisms living in that space. So they would have to compete. Maglalaban sila doon. Kung sino malakas, kung sino dominant, they would own the place. Parang ganun lang naman yan. Alright, it says here, natural selection occurs through survival of the fittest. What does this means? So let's define fitness first. What is fitness? The ability to survive and reproduce. Take note. Okay, tuloy tayo. Alright, saan tayo natigil? Dito sa fitness, the ability to survive and reproduce. So, take note, guys. Pag sinabi mong you are fit, hindi lang yan yung malaking katawan mo or what. Ibig sabihin nun, sa biology, you have the ability to survive and reproduce. Survive means buhay ka pa rin. At hindi lang yung natatapos doon. Means that buhay ka and you have this reproductive ability to duplicate your kind. Kasi kung ikaw lang, namatay ka na, well, may extinguish na yung linya ng lahi mo, di ba? Now, look at this. Sabi rito, not all individuals survive to adulthood. How's this? Because some organisms die at an earlier stage of their development. Like, for example, yung iba, larval stage pa lang, patay na. Let's say, in the case of mosquitoes, di ba? Larval stage, nasa tubig. Karoon ng environmental change, natuyo. Patay yung lahat. Hindi mabubuhay pag walang tubig. So, ganun yun. Di ba? Alright, tuloy tayo. Number 4 is selection. The individuals with the best traits. Take note best traits. Pinakamagandang katangian. Or, the individuals with the best adaptations will survive and have the opportunity to pass it on to the offspring. What will be passed on? Yung traits nila. So, napag-usapan natin before, adaptations can be structural, physiological, or behavioral. Now, these adaptive characteristics can be passed on. Can be, kasi pag namatay ka, hindi mo may papasa yun. Right? Natural selection acts on the phenotype, which is the physical appearance of the organism. Let's say, kulay ng mata, klase ng buhok, kulay ng balat, height, and so on. Sabi rito, it's not the genotype, but the phenotype. The genotype is the combination of genes. Okay, yung dominant and recessive genes. Example, when a predator finds its prey, a predator is the one that kills the prey. The prey is the one that eventually gets killed in a predatory relationship. It is due to the prey's physical characteristics. Tama, di ba? Makikita naman ng predator yung prey sa appearance niya eh. Like color. So, yung kulay. Kitang-kita yun eh. Or slow speed. Halimbawa, mabagal. So, hinabol ng predator, naabutan. Todas. Tegok. Not the alleles. Diba? The genotype is the alleles. Like ito, yung BB, yung both capital. Tawag dyan guys ay homozygous dominant alleles. Yung second one, yung capital B, small b is heterozygous alleles. Okay? So, yan siya. Individuals with traits that are not well suited to their environment either die or leave few offspring. Either namamatay o kaya naman kakaunti yung offsprings nila o yung mga nagiging anak. How does evolution occur? It occurs when good traits build up in a population. A population is composed of different organisms, okay, of the same kind, over many generations. Paano yun? Let's say, the ability to run fast. Like for instance, in the case of cheetah or maybe ostriches. So, yung trait na yun will be passed on to different generations of those organisms. And eventually, it builds up in the entire generation. Tama? Now, it's good for them because it will allow them to, number one, hunt their prey and catch their prey ng mas mababang oras, mas mabilis nilang mahuli, mabilis nilang tumakbo eh. At the same time, if a predator attacks them, they can easily evade. Natatakasan nila yan. And bad traits are eliminated by the death of the individual. Halimbawa, yung mga mababagal tumakbo, masasakitin, mahihina. Pag namatay yon, mga yon, tigil na yung bad traits na yon. Tapos yung mga nag-survive na may mas magandang trait, doon sa generation na yon, sila ngayon yung dadami. That's natural selection. Through evolution through natural selection. Alright. Inulit niya ulit. Able to survive and reproduce. Tandaan niya na, able to survive and reproduce. Hindi sapat yung nag-survive ka. Kailangan i-duplicate mo yung sarili mo by way of reproduction. Kasi kung ikaw lang, pag namatay ka, tigil ang linya ng lahi mo. Alright? There are 3 types of natural selection. Pag-usapan natin yan ngayon. Sabi dito, suppose a certain mouse population has a range of fur colors from light brown to dark brown. Look at the graph here. So, meron ka rito frequency of individuals. Yung original population is this. This is the phenotype, yung kulay ng balahibo. Kulay ng balahibo. Light brown to dark brown. Frequency in the last ng mga individuals mo. O dami. Okay, the first type of natural selection is directional selection. For example, the surrounding woody environment may provide better camouflage. Woody environment means there are lots of plants that would serve as cover for darker mice. Thus, most of the lighter color mice may be easily hunted kasi kitang-kita agad ng predator yung light colored na mouse eh. Unlike dun sa mga dark colored na mice, makakapag-camouflage yun, meaning they can blend with the environment. So, hindi agad sila makikita. So, what happens? Siyempre, since lighter color mice can easily be hunted, mas mabilis mauubos to. Okay? Yan o. Evolved population. How's that? The dark colored mice will be able to survive and reproduce kasi hindi sila nadidistract ng mga predators and hindi sila naubos. That's directional selection. Of course, you have to think about another example of directional selection because I'll be asking you this during the discussion. Type 2 is stabilizing selection. For example, a new predator may only be able to see vivid colors. Yun lang yung kaya niyang makita, like white and dark brown, allowing the dull brown mouse to avoid detection and escape. So, merong specific segment of population that would avoid detection kasi hindi siya nakikita or hindi siya napapansin kasi mas nakikita ng predator yung white and dark. So, ito, makakaligtas to. So, mangyayari niyan, it will survive, it will reproduce, it will continue to live. Stabilizing selection ang tawag. So, isip din kayo nito. And the third type is disruptive selection. Predators may not eat the vividly colored mice. Bakit? Because the other white and dark brown creatures in that area are toxic. Toxic means poisonous. So, syempre, magkakaroon ng reaction itong predator mo na, oops, toxic tong dalawa eh. So, hindi na niya yung kakainin. Diba? Hindi na kakain, parang ikaw. Yung dalawang klase ay toxic. So, most probably, this is also toxic. So, it will survive and reproduce. That's it. Yun ang lesson natin. Hanggang dun lang tayo. Okay, so get ready for some questions during the class. I'll end with this. Thank you for your time. And I hope this helps you in your lesson about evolution through natural selection. Thank you very much. This is Kiros Kamote. Have a nice day. Peace. Bye.